Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask Angela to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Foster.
Present.
Hearn.
Present.
Lee.
Present?
Sampu.
Not yet.
Not here.
Nothing yet. Tangney present. Abedili.
Present.
Administrator Darcy Carley.
Present.
Staff member Kim Kavanaugh.
Present.
And Agent Ed Hoops.
Present.
We have 5 commissioners, so we have a quorum.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of Town of Barnstable, DBW, Laura Bass Trust, Trustee 364 Vinyl Avenue Realty Trust, and Stuart L. Living, Trustee 508 Vinyl Avenues Nominal Trust, Robert and Elizabeth Nahill. The hearing is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government's Access Channel. The plans and applications are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. In accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, please let the chair know if anyone is recording this meeting. Hearing none, this evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to the Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed by the Governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1. The hearing will be televised via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via Town of Barnstable's Government's Access Channel. 2. The real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 818-7821-4202 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. 3rd, the public can also email the comment to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. This evening, we have 1 RDA, Town of Barnstable, DBW, demolish and replace concrete slab and walkway across front and sides of the building in existing footprint to provide ADA accessibility at X57 Creekview Beach Road, Sanderville, as shown on the Assessors Map 225 Parcel 006. Is Mark with us?
Here.
Go ahead.
Thanks,
Welcome.
Tom. Thanks, Tom. I haven't been before this commission in quite some time. I think I have the ability to share my screen, so I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
And can everybody see this screen?
Not yet. It's coming up.
Okay.
I don't think, oh, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah, it's very, very slow.
Oops, what happened?
Can you see it?
No. Yeah.
There it is.
Okay. So this is presentation for Covell's Beach House for request for determination of applicability. These are the aerials that you have in your packet. This one right here is existing conditions, and this is just highlighted where the proposed work is. This building was built in the 60s. There's a concrete slab around 3 sides of the building with a concrete walkway that goes to the parking lot. The concrete slab is below the level of the floor. You see this black strip right here. At some point in time, Somebody thought it would be a good idea to fill it in with asphalt. There's a 4-inch pitch from here to here because the slab is 4 inches lower than the floor. So that doesn't meet code at all. So the point of this project is to create accessibility to the doors of the building. This is the existing site plan right now. You can see this concrete walkway and the concrete surround on 3 sides. There's a shower on the left side of the building right now. And this is what we're proposing to do. This dark line right here is Natural Heritage Endangered Species line. So we're working behind that line, not towards the water. The water's down here. This is a close-up of the floor plan showing the new concrete slab. So it'd be a concrete walkway up here and would wrap around on both sides. And this area would be where the shower is. And we're also planning to put a bench on the patio. So this dashed line right here is the line of the existing slab. So we are pulling back away from the water a bit, but we're widening it out in order to create the width that we need for handicapped accessibility. So the existing slab is 527 square feet. We'll be at 599 square feet when we're done. Again, but we're all operating behind the endangered species line. And these are some photographs of the building. This is the side view with the handicapped walkway right here. And this is the water side view with slab. And of course, this is photographs of the slab. It's there now. That's all I kind of have. I will stop sharing. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the commissioner? John?
And just a quickie, Mark, I assume, and I don't know if there's any vegetation that's going to be removed or whatever. I assume the plan is any vegetation disturbed will be replaced in kind.
Yeah, we're moving along to the sides. There really isn't a lot of vegetation around the building that would be affected.
Great, thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner?
Just letting you know I finally got on.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Channel 18, any public comment on this? Dave, any public comment on this one?
Dave.
Seeing none.
Let me try one more time. Dave, is there any public comment on this applications? Well, hearing none, I guess. Could I have a motion to approve this application as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Sampu,
Abstain.
Tangney, I, Abadili,
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck, Mark. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you too.
Tom?
Yeah.
Before we go forward, I'm unable to put people's hands down, so if you can please put your hand down after you raise it, I'd appreciate it, John.
Yes, ma'am. Hands down. Where you
I
got it?
usually can do it, but I can't seem to make it work. Thank
You
you.
got it.
Yeah, you got it. Yep. We have two NOI tonight. The first one is Laura Bass Trust Trustee, 364 Vinyl Avenue Realty Trust, and Stuart R. Levy Trustee, 508 Vinyl Avenue Trustee, nominal trust, vegetation management to include removal of invasive, aggressive, and non-native plant species, including Phragmites, at 271 East Bay Road, Austinville, as shown on the Assessors Map 163, parcel 005 and 408 Vinyl Avenue, Austinville, as shown on the Assessors Map 140, parcel 154-002. John?
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting and representing the applicants. I will bring up the plan for you all. As was described, this project is taking place across two parcels, one of them being 271 East Bay Road, which is the more westerly parcel. We are off of kind of between East Bay Road and Weano Avenue. So we have 271 East Bay and 408 Weano. These are two neighboring parcels, totally unrelated, but they came together to present this project to you to hopefully begin some restoration efforts in the wetlands area. As the description said, this is for vegetation management, including of invasive, including Phragmites. And if you had a chance to go there, this area that's been outlined is predominantly Phragmites. And so we hope that this project will result in a restoration of just over an acre of salt marsh and bordering vegetated wetland, and that as we've seen at many of these other projects around town, that if we can get the Phragmites under control, that the native grasses and vegetation will infill itself very quickly, and we'll have a nicely restored wetland area here. This was filed as required as an ecological restoration limited project. So we've been through all the steps that were needed for that with the state. And I think with that, I'd just be happy to answer any questions.
John, in the application itself, it mentioned that you apply for the NHESP letter for comment. Have you got any letter comment from them?
I believe we did receive something back where they confirmed that this isn't even in their jurisdiction. But I can check for that while we talk.
Can you check? And if you have it, can you send it to us? I don't think we have that in the file. Question from the commissioner, Bill.
Yeah, the narrative for the project with the NOI, it references, quote, the Mass DEP Wetland Restriction Order, unquote. What is that?
So prior to wetlands protections and conservations and buffer zones, the state sort of mapped wetlands around the state and recorded a document that said, you can't do anything without getting approval to do it, basically. I think
It's like a pre-Wetlands Protection Act thing?
I mean, it was in the 80s, so I guess there was already a Wetlands Protection Act, but maybe people didn't know what to do with it yet. I think it's essentially been superseded by all of our regulations, but notice of intent still have a check box on whether we're in it. There's basically it says you can't do anything without getting approvals, except you can build piers and you can build boardwalks and you can do these sort of things, but you can't build a tennis court in an ocean or something.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Any other question from the commissioner? Seeing none. Channel 18, any public comment on this application?
Yes, there was one person for public comment, named Arunas. Don't know, can't pronounce the last name. Now is your time to unmute. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Can we go back to full screen?
All right.
Yeah, we don't really have any comment, except for
Before you speak, can you tell us what your name and address?
Yeah, Arunas Vaidakaitis and Aldona Ademonis at 255 East Bay Road.
Okay, thank you.
So we share a driveway. Part of the property, our property is the road that goes along the marsh, and so 271 East Bay Road has access to their property along that little stretch, and so it's just a Phragmites on that side of the on the marsh side of the property that it's going to be taken down, is what I assume. And I don't, if I don't have any problem with any of that.
Thank you. Any more public comment, Channel 18?
I don't believe so, but if you are here for public comment, now is your time to speak. Seeing none.
John, a couple of things. Number one, this projects would, do you need an ongoing conditions for the ongoing maintenance for the invasive removal?
Yes, that is part of the request.
And secondly, we will require the contractor to be a certified ecological restoration practitioner professionals. Do you have anyone in mind yet, or you don't know yet?
I don't know who will be the SERP. I think that they have worked with Joyce Landscaping on most of the work around the property, but I don't know if they are SERP, and so they might have to subcontract or elsewhere contract this out.
Okay. So with that, could I have a motion to approve this project subject to, one, the receipt of the name of the cert practitioners let me try it again. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to the receipt of the name of the certified professionals submitted to the conservation staff for review and approval, with a written protocol or the vegetation management plan, with an ongoing conditions for the maintenance for the invasive removal?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Clarify.
Aye.
Does you want
Wait a minute, John?
It came out a little bit funny if you're saying that the order is subject to getting the SERP. I think what you're saying is we're issuing the order with the condition that these things have to happen.
Yeah.
John, I think you are correct in that correction.
Just wanted to make sure I'm hearing.
Okay.
So Sampu,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Abedili,
Aye.
and Tangney, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yep. The second NOI of the evening is Robert and Elizabeth Hayhill. Demolition of existing three-bedroom dwelling, replacement with 4-bedroom dwelling with septic system, deck and gravel driveway at 190 Harris Meadow Lane, Barnstable, as shown on the Assessors Maps 280 parcel 001. Matthew?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. For the record, Matthew Whitty, professional engineer with Baxter & I Engineering and Surveying, representing Robert and Elizabeth Nayhill for the project before you. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So the project before you is a notice of intent to raise and rebuild. There's an existing single-family home on the lot, and that will be raised and rebuilt into a 4-bedroom home is the proposal. The address, as stated into the record, is 190 Harris Meadow Lane in Barnstable Village. The lot area is approximately 1/2 acre. And I'll just walk through the site existing conditions and then talk about the proposed project. So the resources that we have on the lot are coastal bank along here. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Well, over to the north here, this is Barnstable Harbor, obviously. Existing revetment. The top of that revetment is the coastal bank. We also have some salt marsh and bordering vegetated wetland off the lot to the west. And then the entire lot is in the floodplain and the land subject to coastal storm flowage. The majority of the site, as far as floodplain, falls in zone AE elevation 13. And all of the structure and proposed work is outside of the coastal A zone or outside of the limit of moderate wave action. As I mentioned, the lot's fully developed with an existing home. What you're seeing outlined in red here is the existing house structure, and then also a shed over here. On this plan, you're seeing in the orange is the proposed house footprint, mitigation area here. This is the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank and the salt marsh that's off-site. Existing utilities that are serving this home. It is on public water, and it's also on a Title V septic system. Portions of the existing septic system, I'll zoom in a little bit here. There's a pump chamber over here in the septic tank. They do partially fall within the 50 to 100-foot buffer on the existing. Then to the proposed, again, all structures to be raised. As I mentioned, this is in orange here. This is a proposed footprint for a new 2-story 4-bedroom home with an attached garage, some decks on it, and then also a gravel driveway leading up to the garage. In placing this, we did slide the building slightly away from the water, if you will, so slightly to the south. The footprint of the proposed house was designed so that a good portion of it can fall outside of the 100-foot buffer that you see along here. New Title V system, all components are moved entirely outside of the 100-foot buffer. New septic tank and disposal field located here on the far south end of the lot. We moved it over as far as we could on the lot. Dry wells are proposed for the proposed house to directly infiltrate all the roof runoff. The first floor elevation, again, as the lot is within the 100-year floodplain, we have the first floor elevation set at a little bit more than 2.5 feet above the flood elevation of 13. That is I believe coming in January 1. That's going to be part of the building code requirements, is raising 2 feet above the flood. The proposed project, all of the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer, other than the mitigation. It's all within currently altered areas. We have performed mitigation calculations, as a table on the plan, per your regulation 704. Based on we have about 700, a little over 700 square feet of increase in hardscape. So we've calculated just about 2,200 square feet of mitigation required at the 3-to-1 ratio. We provided that at the top of the revetment. This is all existing lawn area, well manicured lawn area. So we'll be removing that lawn area and mitigating that with the coastal plantings. There is a mitigation planting schedule on the plan as well. And then as to performance standards, I believe that this meets all of the necessary performance standards. We're not altering the coastal bank. The mitigation along the top of the bank will enhance water quality, help stabilize the buffer, will enhance wildlife habitat. It will also help to a certain extent, reduce slightly impacts from flooding, just from providing vegetation as opposed to lawn area. This bank is solely a vertical buffer bank. Again, salt marsh that's off-site. We're over 50 feet away from that and working in already altered areas. Again, I think the mitigation that's provided increases the vegetation cover, helps reduce managed lawn areas. So those will all go towards the performance standards for salt marsh as far as protection of the resources. And then the land subject to coastal storm flowage. Again, we are outside of the moderate wave action. I still, as a part of just general rule, we do look at your guidelines for work within floodplain. As I mentioned, the structures being raised to over 2.5 feet above flood for the first floor inhabitable space. The building will be reconstructed under current building code as required. This will provide enhanced flood zone resiliency. Addition of smart vents, et cetera, will be in the foundation. That'll help allow flood waters to pass through, so reduce potential for floodwater displacement. The existing topography is going to remain generally the same as it is. So again, no displacement of floodwaters as well. And I believe the proposal, the improvements to the structure will actually help reduce storm damage debris. If you look at the existing house, older structure, habitable space in the floodplain, et cetera. If there is a storm, there's more potential of debris being dispersed from that existing home versus under the proposed condition, the structure being raised and meeting building code, again, enhances that flood resiliency. And I think that's about it. And just real quick, I think the benefits that this is providing is, again, the house aspect for flood resiliency building code, as I just mentioned. Again, moving all of the components of the Title V system outside of the 100-foot buffer, and a significant addition of vegetated buffer here, removing manicured lawn. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Matthew.
You want me to drop the screen?
Yes, please. Bill.
I think it seems like a pretty good project. However, I'm doing something with my screen. Okay. It seems like a good project. Our state and town have been really focused on nutrient inloading to Nantucket Sound and like the 3 bays and whatnot. And it's a big deal. However, Cape Cod Bay has had its nutrient problems, and in the last few years, there's been some significant die-offs of lobster in southern Cape Cod Bay, right along, Sandwich and Barnstable. And so we don't have the authority, if you will, to say, no, you have to put in an IA sewer system. But I guess I'm just sort of hoping that you will at least suggest to the owner that they put in an IA. It's like, what, 20-25 grand more than a normal system. And, you're tearing down a house and putting up a 4-story sitting right on the water. I'm thinking the additional cost for an IA is not that much of a increase compared to the total cost and the benefits to potentially to the Barnstable Harbor and the bay is significant. And I just think perhaps the landowners may want to be great stewards and feel proud that they put in an IA system. So I encourage you to pursue that. Thank you.
Understood. I will make that suggestion to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Pete?
Yeah, so just let me take a look at this mitigation planting schedule. There's 64 plants. Do I have this wrong?
No, that sounds about right, Pete.
Okay, and you got 22,000 square feet mitigation. That's about 30 square feet per plant.
2,200.
Yeah, 2,200. Sorry,
Yeah.
2,200 divided by 64 is about 30. Now, and that doesn't seem like that's not in my book a very complete mitigation planting. Additionally, the 4 species that you have there, they're all fairly low in their growth. If you really want to improve habitat, as you stated you did, essentially removing the grass, which has got really almost no value except for geese that probably don't walk up that edge there. But I would like to see a much more robust buffer and mitigation area that you're doing. That's my comment now.
Okay, if I could just comment real quick, we can look at the spacing aspect. We did do it per the cooperative list as far as the shrub size and recommended spacing on center, but I can double check that, and if we need to augment the count, we can do that. We do want to keep it though as lower understory shrubs, etc. And again, we did do 4 different species to provide a diverse vegetation, but again, from a view aspect and so forth, you can understand we don't want to put in any higher shrubs within that mitigation area.
Well, sort of exactly. I fished Barnstable Harbor all summer long as a teacher, and I'm seeing a shocking increase in developed shoreline property with little three-dimensional vegetated structure between those buildings and the bay. And I know that where the land is more natural, and I don't know if the cedars would work there, the red juniper cedars, we call them. But again, three-dimensional complexity is a major benefit for wildlife and for the viewing public out there, out on Barnstable Harbor, looking out, looking onshore to these significantly larger homes that are replacing the more, I should say, traditional wooden structures that used to be along the shoreline. That's all I got to say for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before I go to John, Darcy, did you have a chance to look at the mitigation plans?
Exactly my question.
Yeah, I was going to ask Matt if he could definitely increase the size of the pasture rows. I think we can do better than the 1 gallon. I think we could fit in some additional plants, and then I would just say demarcation for the mitigation area.
Okay. John?
Well, that was my question. I wanted Darcy's input, and I value that. Thanks, Darcy.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I just wanted a demarcation line, and if Darcy's going for that, that's good.
Any more questions from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this? Jake?
I don't believe any, but if there is somebody here, now is your time to speak.
Jacob,
I have my hand up.
I saw Jake's hands up.
Oh, okay. Jake.
I'll keep it real quick. Just a little insight. Here for something else, but I fish a lot in Barnstable Harbor, and it was almost not something like the nitrogen problem in Barnstable Harbor was almost something that was irrelevant in the past, but as time has gone on, you're seeing more evidence of the nitrogen in the harbor, whether that's a cumulative effect of all the coastal development or if that's water temperatures rising. I'm not really sure, but there is some environmental degradation going on that a lot of people believe is from nitrogen in Barnstable Harbor. So that's all.
Thank you. Channel 18, any more public comment on this one?
I don't currently see any, but if you do want to speak, now is your time. Seeing none.
Okay. Commissioner, is it okay to asking for a revised plans for the vegetations, for the mitigation plantings?
And the demarcation.
No, I'm not finished yet. So submitting
I'm sorry, Tom.
Come on,
the
John.
revised mitigation planning for staff to review, for Darcy to review. Is that okay? And
Yes.
then we'll add the demarcation line.
So moved. Sorry, Bill.
Okay.
So moved.
Let me do
Tom.
this. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the revised mitigation planting subjects to staff review and adding the demarcation line?
So moved.
Can we have a quick discussion first? And I will mention to my fellow commissioners that I've got an unstable connection, so I had to take my video off so at least you could hear me and not have it too garbled. So I trust Darcy on this, but I do want to emphasize as best as possible a benefit for habitat with some more vertical complexity. Do you hear me loud and clear, Darcy?
I do. I'll work with Matt, and he's also going to increase the size of the Carolina rose. But Matt, we can add, but we're not talking about cedars. We're talking about shrubs and maybe, some additional ones and larger size on the pasture rose. Is that good?
Well, how big is a northern bayberry going to be?
That's the 5
8
gallon.
No, I mean at full growth.
Vertical.
Yeah, vertical. How high are these things? You know,
I don't
pasture-
have that chart in front of me.
Okay, well, pasture rows, I mean, I'm not expecting it to be much more than 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah, that's about right.
Beach plum, again, about the same size. Low bush blueberry, I mean, it's a friggin' low bush. And finally, the northern bayberry.
I think the northern bayberry gets a little bit taller, but I'll work with Darcy. I hear what you're saying, Pete. I will definitely, we're going to increase that gallon size, and I'll work with Darcy on trying to introduce a couple of a little bit more vertical, with a
Just
little bit more height.
taller shrubs that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
will,
Yep.
that will fit in the area.
Yep.
Cool. Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
will do. Yep. Thanks, Pete.
So I make the motions with the discussions. Anyone second?
I did second.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
and Tangney. Aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. You have a great night.
Yep. We have one amended order tonight. This is Town of Barnstable to amend order of conditions to replace 570 linear feet of existing water lines to reestablish water service to the pier and install 570 linear feet of empty electrical conduit for future electrical services from the pumps house to the piers and replace the existing utility pedestal on the piers located at Bismarck Park on Hyannis Inner Harbor at 180 Ocean Street, Hyannis, as shown on the Assessors Map 326, parcel 068. Jeremy?
Yes, I'm here. Hey, everybody. Jeremy Packard with both Infrastructure and Environment. I am here tonight on behalf of the Town of Barnstable and their request to amend the existing order of conditions for Bismarck Park. The original order was issued back in August of this year, and we had some proposed work along the bulkhead. It was just bulkhead maintenance, recoating, some steel plating, and installation of cathodic protection anodes. And we had that project nearly ready for bid when I got a call from the town saying that they had a water line leak in the water line that feeds the piers for the marina. And my understanding is that they had been kind of chasing some leaks around that, for years and kind of doing maintenance and patching and that kind of thing. And knowing that the bulkhead maintenance work was coming down the line, they requested include this work as part of the overall maintenance work is in Bismarck Park. So that is the reason for the amended order here before you tonight. So the actual work proposed is trenching for a water line. It's a fairly straightforward utility replacement project. The proposed alignment of the water line, we went back and forth on this a little bit. And so the existing line comes out of the north side of the sewer pump house here, the sewer pump shed on Bismarck Park. And we decided to keep it so we follow the same alignment along the building, and we bring it into the existing concrete walkway there. Now initially we had gone straight out this way. There's an old line here for the sewer, so we're going to follow that line. Going this way, we had some concerns with. You can probably all see it now, but there are trees in the area. We had to go through this concrete walkway anyway. It was a longer run, right? There were a lot of reasons why we decided to kind of abandon this plan and go with the trench right down the existing concrete walkway. So we head east from the pump station down this concrete walkway. This concrete walkway will be fully demoed and replaced. We get out here to the paved harbor walk, right up perpendicular to the bulkhead. And then the plan is to just trench along the bulkhead the whole way, restore that water service, install the new water line, and then restore the service out to all the pedestals on the pier. We do expect that once we restore service at the water line, at the interface between the land and the piers, that the service on the piers themselves doesn't have any issues, doesn't have any damage. We're not expecting to have to do any work on the piers. I do show the restoration to the pedestals, just in case there is some work in between the connections here. But like I said, that's not anticipated. So we're expecting to just kind of trench right along the bulkhead here, restore service, and cover that back up. So following construction, following the installation of the water line and the empty utility, the empty electrical conduit. That was at the request of the Harbor Master's office, knowing there is the potential for future improvements at this site. We want to bury an electrical conduit with it just so we don't have to come back and redig it up in the future. After the utility lines are installed, the plan is to completely restore all the areas where it's been trenched, right? So loam and seed, in the grass area north of the pump shed. We would re-pour this concrete slab, 6-inch concrete slab to be re-poured. And then we would repave the entirety of the harbor walk in the trenched area. And that was decided so we didn't have this like patched look, where you're dealing with a freeze thaw cycle and you end up with, really deteriorated pavement along this harbor walk, which, as we all know, gets heavy use from the public. So the harbor walk in this area will be repaved following that work. And so the work lies in land subject to coastal zone flowage and buffer zone. We do not have any permanent impacts since it's, we're restoring all existing conditions. So all impacts associated with the work are temporary. And traffic management. So the work area, the site will be secured. And when I say the site, I don't mean all of Pismo Park, right? Pismo Park will remain open to the public, but the actual work areas will be secured during construction by the contractor. And at one, when they have the trench open, they might be able to kind of shift the pedestrian flow and allow some flow kind of on this west side of the path. During the repaving operations, obviously there'll be no foot traffic allowed here, so they'll have basically a detour to get them around while they're actually doing the repaving and letting that set, probably 24 hours a set before you can allow foot traffic back on there. And that's pretty much it. Request for an amended order for a water line replacement.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any question from the commissioner? Seeing none. Any public comments? Channel 18.
I'm seeing none, but if you have any public comment, now is your time to speak. Seeing none.
Seeing none. Jeremy, I just have one comment, minor comment. Since you have the opening with the trench here, and you're putting empty conduit stuff, and this is, this is only my opinion. This is if you want to add some spare conduit in, this is your time. So it's up to you and the town decided whether you want to put any additional spare conduit for that.
More conduit is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Okay. Because if you just carry, I typically carry one more just in case. You don't have to dig it up again. PVC is cheap.
It's cheap, right? I hear you. No, that's a good suggestion. We'll consider that.
Yeah. Could I have a motion to approve this amended orders as requested?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Tangney, aye. Sampu,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck. We have two continuance. The first one is Kenneth and Patricia Randall proposed foundation and additions to existing single-family house, rebuild retaining wall, add drainage structures for driveway and roof runoff, construct stairs and walkway at 95 Ancanet Road, Centerville, as shown in the Assessors Maps 252, parcel 015. This is a continuance from October the 1st, and the quorum is everyone. Danny?
Yes, good evening. Danny Gonzalez, professional engineer with Down Cape Engineering. As you mentioned, this is a continued hearing. I'm just going to run through briefly the changes that we made and kind of rehash some of the discussion from the last meeting. But we have submitted new plans as well as a new sketch showing the hardscape. There was some concern about last time replacing deck areas with foundation. So we went back to the drawing board a little bit with the architect and reduced the foundation that is going to be within that deck area. What we've replaced it with is a pervious patio under a deck area above it. The only new kind of foundation addition is in the kind of southwest corner there, which is for storage area similar to what they have now. There also was a discussion about kind of some mitigation and where did that go from the previous. And while we are decreasing hardscape on this project, we have provided 300 square feet of mitigation in the northwest corner of the property over here. And how I came to that 300 square foot number is we have about 90-ish square feet of foundation that's going in within a deck area. So I multiplied that by 3 and added a little bit, and we came to about 300 square feet of mitigation over there. So I will say that in the meantime, since the last continuance, we have heard back from NHESP, and they issued a no take on the property, on the project, I should say. And there was one question about this little area here, this strip, that is actually a deck overhang. So the actual supports for this upper level deck will be right along this dark line here. Again, this is the foundation here. And then this is just a 2-foot cantilevered deck overhang as part of that project. So I think that covers most of the changes, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Danny. Any question from the commissioner? Anyone?
I guess I have a question.
Bill?
Yeah, when you're on the lake and you're looking at the house with your back to the lake, on the right side is a deck that is whatever 10 feet above the lawn, and it's kind of a beat up lawn, and there are stairs there. But in the original project, it was that deck was being counted as hardscape. And the commission here has this. I know that there have been some projects where cantilevering or putting something, jutting out 10 feet off from the house was considered to be an innocuous impact to the buffer because it's grassed in other projects. And here, when it comes to mitigation accounting, it would seem that the if you will cantilevered deck, which is jutting out over that lawn on the right side in particular, is being counted, and I'm concerned about a precedent relative to that.
Thank you, Bill. John?
Yeah, I have to agree with Bill on this thing, because we generally do not count a cantilevered deck that doesn't touch anything except the posts in the ground as hardscape, Bill. So I think the point you're raising is valid, and I would agree with it. So my question then is, as you did your calculations, what was the impact of counting that as hardscape if it was otherwise eliminated as hardscape?
So again, the mitigation was strictly foundation replacing a deck area. So I had about 95-ish square feet of new foundation within an existing deck area, multiplied by 3, came to about 300 square feet of mitigation. So that's how I came to that calculation. I did count deck as hardscape. It's not hardscape. I don't know, or wouldn't know what else to call it. The cantilever deck is counted as well. So that was part of the calculation.
My sense is it doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong. That was my question. I don't think it affects your calculations very much, but I think the point that Bill made is very valid.
But it would affect it. if I
Yeah,
might,
that's a question, Bill. Yeah.
I think it would, because basically the mitigation calculation is above and beyond the baseline hardscape,
Yeah.
how much new hardscape is happening. And
Yeah.
so when you take the difference, well, here you're counting, you know, as baseline that area underneath the quote cantilevered deck.
Right.
So in effect, I would say it was short suiting the mitigation. Now, then the question becomes, okay, so if it's an extra 3 or 4 times X, where would they end up being able to put that mitigation? Because that's a really constrained spot.
Right. But I think that, again, I think the point you're making is I would agree with. So the question is, if you eliminated that as hardscape and therefore increase the amount of new hardscape, what then would the mitigation calculation be? And then there's the follow-up question of where you're going to put it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm agreeing with you totally, Bill.
Thank you.
So if we back out just as a, if we back out the existing deck, would we also back out the proposed deck? Because of this is a big section of second story cantilever deck that we're showing, you know, along that kind of, if you're facing the house from, you know, the water's behind you. So I guess, you know, the way I got to I didn't count any new of that deck as part of the calculation. It was just foundation replacing the deck, and that is how I got to it. So if I back out both decks, then I think it would still be a decrease.
Right.
You know,
I think that's a very, I would also agree with that point, because I think, you know, if we don't count the existing as existing hardscape and we can't count it, the only thing you count is the amount touching the ground is what we usually do.
Right.
And we've significantly reduced the foundation from the previous approval, and we're putting in sonotube posts there, and you know, a pervious area below it. So I tried to kind of take all your comments from the last meeting, and
I do think this plan is significantly better than the original for my own view.
Yep. Okay, Luis.
Could you put your plan back up on the screen? Show us what it is you are counting as new, how you came up with your 90 feet.
Yeah.
So this area right here, this is the kind of new foundation. It's tough to see, but you know, these stairs here where all these lines are, this is the deck area here, and this is the new foundation going over that deck area.
So those stairs that are next to it, are those existing or are they new?
These are proposed. These are proposed stairs here. This is a proposed walkway here. Again, all these mitigation calculations are kind of broken down over here, and we actually have a net decrease in total hardscape with this project.
So how do you get that?
We're removing a big section of pavement in this area.
Where?
Right in here. So I have a
right in where?
So this is all existing pavement, and that is going away.
In the driveway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what last time too.
Yeah, this is all the foundation, this dark orange. This was the previously approved plan, and this is kind of the proposed. For what it's worth, the existing foundation footprint, about 1,274 square feet. The previously approved foundation footprint, 1,530 square feet. What we have in front of you today is 1,320 square feet. So about 60 square feet from additional just foundation. You know, again, we're going down in hardscape, but just foundation increase.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, real quick. This looks good. Let's vote on it.
Thank you, Pete. Any public comment on this one, channel 18?
I don't believe there is any, but if you have public comment, now is your time to speak. Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted with the revised plan date October 30th?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Oh, God. Aye.
Foster,
No,
Abadili,
Aye.
Tangney, no. We got a 4-2 passes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. The second continuance, and this is the last one in
excuse
this
me,
hearing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I am not on the quorum. I was absent when this opened, so I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Louise.
Bye.
U.S. Coast Guards to remove ripraps to a minimum depths below mean low water to reduce the navigation hazards to at Coral Ledge, a natural shoulder area of Nantucket Sound in Barnstable, and to remove the topped spindle tower foundations and riprap at Southwest Rock Day Beacon to a minimum depths below mean low water to reduce the navigation hazard near the south coast of Barnstable in Nantucket Sound. This is a continuance from October the 1st and October the 29th, and the quorum is everyone except Louise just left, and Peter has Mullen rule in. And with that, let me go to Christy.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi.
I would like to share my screen. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having us back. I'm Christine Perrin, an environmental scientist with the consulting firm McFarland Johnson. I'm back with you with Dan Del Tufo, the project engineer with Appledore Marine Engineering, and we're here representing the U.S. Coast Guard. The project before you, as you know, is an NOI for the removal of 2 non-functioning aids to navigation under the U.S. Coast Guard's jurisdiction. Each of these aids to be removed consists of a mound of riprap. The purpose of the project is to improve marine public safety. Since the October 1st hearing that we attended, the Coast Guard has compiled additional information on vessel strikes at Collier's Ledge. Based on the information received, there's a vessel strike approximately once a year on average that requires an emergency call for service. And up to 9 of these incidents have occurred since 2020, with 2 of them occurring this year in July and October. The Barnstable Harbor Master and Waterways Committee have supported the removal of these rocks due to the public safety concerns that exist. For these reasons, the Coast Guard continues to seek approval for the removal of the rocks to 7 feet below mean low water. This depth provides an adequate depth for general navigation of the small craft vessels that frequent this area. The original design and intent of the project prior to submittal of the NOI was to remove the rocks in their entirety to the mudline. So these images are from the plans submitted with the NOI. The red outline shows the footprint of proposed rock removal. And I'm not sure if that's blocking. There we go. These are sections showing pre and post rock removal. The dash line here and here represents the elevation of 7 feet mean low water. The bottom section down here shows the material that will remain in place, which will be approximately 4 feet in depth of remaining rock. And this is Collier's Ledge. Then moving on to Southwest Rock. At this location, again, the dash line represents the elevation of 7 feet mean low water. The bottom section shows the material that will remain in place after rock removal, which will be approximately 3 feet of rock. Whoops. So the next two slides summarize the comments received from the Division of Marine Fisheries. DMF acknowledges that the rock mounds at Collier's Ledge and Southwest Rock support an active recreational fishery and provide habitat for commercially and recreationally important species in an area that's recognized to have limited structured habitat. If it's determined necessary to remove rocks to maintain safe navigation, which is the purpose of the project, DMF provided the following recommendations to minimize impacts. First, remove only the uppermost portions of riprap and leave the subtidal riprap in place. Second, dispose of the removed rock at an existing artificial reef site in the area. And third, avoid in-water work between April 15th to June 15th to protect squid eggs. The Coast Guard is meeting these recommendations as summarized in red on this slide. The proposed plan would leave 3 to 4 feet of subtidal rock in place. The work will adhere to the recommended time of year restriction, and the Coast Guard is open to the idea of moving the material to existing artificial reefs and will continue coordinating with DMF on that matter. All of these measures help to reduce impacts to habitat and fisheries while maintaining a balance with public safety. And at this point, open it up to questions.
Thank you, Christine. I think you read all the recommendations from the DMF letter, so I'm not going to read that. And then we also have the Fishery and Wildlife under the Wetland Protection Act. This division has determined this project is currently proposed will not adversely affect the actual resource area habitat of state protected rare wildlife species. Under the visa, the division has determined that this project is currently proposed will not result in prohibited take of the state listed rare species. And you also mentioned about Brian Taylor's comment about the harbor master, the accidents, and he submitted an email with that information. And also, I have received at least 9 emails from the citizens that are posing these applications, and then there are 2. Actually, there's one supporting this applications. So with that, let me go to the commissioner first. Bill?
Yeah, I think it's important that we put this particular project, these two projects in Barnstable into some kind of context, because this is a package. It's a package deal with 10 different projects involving 5 towns. Of the 10 projects that are listed, 6 of them do not require any in-water work, and they'll have no effect on wetland or marine resources. And so therefore, 6 out of the 10 don't even need an NOI. There's just simply no effect, no relevance to the Wetlands Protection Act. And then of the 4 for which the Coast Guard has submitted NOIs, of those 4, one of them, the Broadway Day Beacon 3 project in Falmouth, only involves complete replacement of a day beacon. That involves removing and replacing an old metal structure. That's essentially an in-kind project, a new metal structure replacing a defective old structure. And then the single project in Harwich involves removing a defunct rotten timber pile structure that at one time served as an aid to navigation. And it's near the end of a jetty in a harbor. The only other 2 projects needing an NOI are in our town, Barnstable. And those projects involve largely eliminating the potential for boats to run aground by dredging 3,600 cubic yards of rock at Collier's Ledge, with resulting substantial impacts for the habitats of recreational marine fish species, and removal of another 700 cubic yards at Southwest Day Beacon. So it seems like the only real environmental impacts associated with this large 10 project effort by the Coast Guard is happening in our town. And so I have quite a bit to say, but I'd just like to start with a couple of questions. And that is, why can't an additional lighted beacon or buoy or something be installed at Collier's Ledge rather than impact important marine habitat? And as we got an email today from Jacob Angelo, who said, well, why is the buoy even, I think he said it was 100 feet off from Collier's Ledge, and that people trying to, avoid that buoy run right into it. Why can't something better be put in instead of destroying really important habitat? That's question one. And the other is, I'm just wondering, what's the impetus behind this plan? I mean, was it pushed by some outside force? Somebody wants it down? Or was it simply a desire to reduce the number of aids to navigation? Just because, it was thought, well, it's an artificial reef, no one's going to care. I mean, what's behind it? And can't you do something besides remove the rock? Thank you.
Real quick, it was 100 yards.
100 yards.
Christine, do you want to respond? Christine, do you want to respond to this before I go on, or you want to, or do you want me to get all the questions first?
I'm fine with you getting all of the questions first, and then Dan and I can decide who will address them. Okay,
thanks. Pete?
Okay, I would like to point out that Dr. Hearn has a PhD in fisheries ecology, so he speaks with authority on fisheries and fish habitat. I myself have a PhD in oceanography, and I am an avid fisher who has actually fished out at Collier's Ledge. And I'm going to actually read some quotes from a Connor Rogan, a commercial fisherman in the town of Barnstable, because he said it better than me. Quote, dismantling a historic and natural structure seems to me to be a waste of time and taxpayer money, only to destroy great habitat that benefits both the fish that call it home and the fisherman who takes advantage of it. This ledge is marked by a lighted hazard to navigation buoy and a buoy marking the rock pile. I feel that the safety should be the sole responsibility of the boater. For the folks who buy boats and make unwise choices like running into well-marked rock piles, that is their fault and their fault alone. Boating is inherently dangerous and comes with consequences for those who do not take the time to learn aids to navigation, look at a chart, learn how to read their radar, and take all the necessary safety precautions. The folly of a few is no reason to spend taxpayer money to destroy the environment. But I'm going to, I think it's from a habitat and ecological standpoint, it's an awful idea. I agree with you, Dr. Hearn. But I'm sort of surprised that the Conservation Commission in the town of Barnstable is given an opportunity to weigh in yay or nay on a Coast Guard project that the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries is greenlighting. If we say no to this, we lose the ability to condition it. I think, well, first of all, I think if we say no to this, we're going to lose on some kind of repeal to the state or feds. So my suggestion is they've kept a little bit of the rock piles at each of these spots. Okay, we don't lose the entire habitat. I would like, actually, and it was suggested that they would attempt to. I want to condition this as a requirement that the rock taken out of this area be used to augment existing or to be planned artificial reefs. If we can expand the diversity of habitat in this part of our waters, that is potentially a benefit for the fish species. But that is something we can condition only if we accept this NOI to go forward. Thank you for the time letting me speak.
Thank you, Pete. John?
Thank you, Tom. I've got, I'm not ready to give a speech yet, but I do have a few questions, Christine. Let me present those questions if I can for your response. First of all, as I understand this, this is the so-called voluntary filing. Could you explain to me why the Coast Guard chose to file this? Could you explain to me what is the jurisdiction under voluntary filing of the Barnstable Conservation Commission? And under what law are we operating? Is it town or state or something else? That's my first question. I need some guidance with that. We've heard from the town lawyer, but I find myself somewhat confused. And if you could help me understand that, I would appreciate it. My second question is, I saw the elevations you submitted. Could you give me roughly the percent removal on each of the two areas? What percent of the existing rock pile is being removed in each of the two areas? My third question is, your words of the Coast Guard would consider rebuilding these elsewhere isn't enough for me, because if this was approved, I would put that as a condition. So would the Coast Guard be willing to accept that as a condition of approval? My final question is pretty much, I think, what Bill said. Why is the Coast Guard not looking at, or did the Coast Guard look at putting in additional navigation markers better than what is there now? There is no question in my mind that it is a navigation hazard. I've been out there in my boat, and it is scary for me as a boater. And I sort of resent somebody saying, oh, well, boaters are dumb or they got to take their own risks. I think the commission needs to consider the Coast Guard's position that this is a navigation hazard.
Call.
However, I
Cassie.
think that, I'm sorry.
Call Cassie.
Wayne, could you silence
Just to
yourself?
confirm, you'd like to call trade.
Yes, can you hear me?
No, can you silence
Wayne,
yourself,
can you
please,
mute
Wayne?
yourself? Wayne, can you mute yourself?
Yes.
Thank you.
Finally, I would say, and this is where I'm really torn, because there's no question that there is a navigation hazard there. There is no question that this is a wonderful habitat that will be impacted negatively. So I guess those are my concerns and issues, and I would really appreciate your addressing those questions, Christine, if you could help me out.
Christine and your colleague, can you address those questions before we go on?
Sure. So I'm going to look for Dan to provide any input that he may have from the Coast Guard on the consideration of additional navigational markers.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks again for hearing this continuance, and I appreciate that passion that you guys have for these structures in the fishing community out there. So thank you all for your time tonight. As to why these structures are selected by the Coast Guard, they're governed by tiers of government, as I'm sure you can wrap your heads around. And this particular civil engineering unit is responsible for the maintenance of all of the District 1 Northern New England hard asset facilities, these two structures included. They consider them assets, although there's not much left to them. So their consideration is that it's kind of unused property that's a hazard. Let's maintain it by removing it.
Did they consider, excuse me for jumping in, but did they consider putting in additional navigation aids, better lined up, lighting, etc., as an option to taking down the two rock ledges? Was that considered, and why was that not a viable option to this?
The time the conversation reached our desk, it was please remove these structures. We were not involved in any Coast Guard conversation about alterations of or additions of navigation beacons. That said, there are supplementary navigation aids there. There are lighted buoys, as you know.
Well, you showed a picture the last time of one of them that was lying on its side and broken. I mean, it makes me wonder why didn't they correct that and add some more? I mean, wouldn't it be less expensive and also serve the goal of increasing navigation safety? I don't understand that.
There is a buoy installed outside Southwest Rock, just to the southwest, as I recall.
All right, thank you. Christine, can you go back to my first question about this voluntary filing and what that means? Could you help me understand that issue? Tom, I'm sorry to jump in here, but those
No,
are
that's okay. I was going to go into that questions. Right now, our premise is this is under the state and under the state's Wetland Protection Act and not the local regulations. So,
right, and that is, sorry about that. And that is our understanding as well. There is precedence for the Coast Guard submitting NOIs for these types of projects. Just a few years ago, NOIs were approved for, I think it was 5 or 6 aids to navigation that were replaced in Massachusetts Bay. I have not been privy to any discussions at the Coast Guard regarding the legality or what federal law they might be operating under. So I cannot fully answer your question. I apologize for that, but there is precedence for getting permits for this work from the state.
one follow-up. Again, Tom, please
go ahead,
forgive me.
go ahead.
Is the Coast Guard willing to commit to rebuilding these kinds of habitats elsewhere if this is otherwise approved? Peter's question.
I think it's difficult for Dan and I to speak for the Coast Guard, but we've been given direction that it is something that they're willing to consider and continue discussing. And I can't imagine them not adhering to a condition.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Angela. Is it Angela?
Yes, thank you, Tom. I just wanted to say quickly, due to the safety issues presented and the support by the Barnstable Harbor Master and the Marine Fisheries, I would like to approve this project so that we can control some conditions on it. So I'm really agreeing with Pete and what he said in a less wordy version, although I do support also what Bill said. But once they start using hazards and safety issues for human life there, we can keep this navigation system open, but it doesn't stop accidents from happening, and removing it does. So I'm leaning towards approving this and being able to put orders of condition on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I was planning to say something, but let me mention this. I mean, to all the citizens that kind of listening in, this is not an easy task for these applications, and we're trying to listen to the comment from the email, understanding that, and partly because the navigation safety issues is a main concern. But then when you're looking under the state Wetland Protection Act, we have limited flexibility in terms of the authorizations. If we do not approve this and going to appeal, we'll lose it, and we don't have any control with any conditions. And that's go back to what Peter is saying. So, it's not an easy decision, but the only option that we may have. But with that, let me go to the public comment on this.
No, hold it. Me. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
I have a lot to say, and I would like to make the case.
Okay.
Why it is that we should vote no, despite what I've heard from y'all. And to begin with, I'd like to document that the creation of artificial reefs is a common and accepted method for enhancing recreational and commercial fisheries. And I'd like to place, and I will place into the record for this project, a couple of documents. And the first is a 205-page report by Lukens and Selberg, 2004, entitled, get this, Guidelines for Marine Artificial Reef Materials It's a joint publication of the Gulf and Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commissions. I'll put that in the record. Secondly, and I have a lot to say here, so please bear with me and do listen. The second document is by Harrison and Rousseau, 2020, entitled Comparison of Artificial and Natural Reef Productivity in Nantucket Sound, Massachusetts, USA. And that's published in the periodical Estuaries and Coasts. And Mark Rousseau is a senior habitat biologist with the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries. Harrison and Rousseau in their article state, quote, Nantucket Sound is largely comprised of featureless, sandy substrate and is home to the state's oldest and youngest artificial reefs, unquote. And it appears that they were unaware that Collier's Reef was artificial because they cite their agency's construction and monitoring of an artificial reef constructed in 1978 in Yarmouth as being their oldest. Marine Fisheries, Division of Marine Fisheries in Mass, has promoted artificial reef construction in Nantucket Sound because of the very limited coarse substrate important to marine fisheries resources. In its October 28, 2024 letter to the Barnstable Conservation Commission, and this is an important point that was just not brought up a minute ago, the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries stated as their first bullet, they had a bunch of comment bullets, their first bullet, that they recommend that the Collier's Ledge and the Southwest Rock Day Beacon, quote, remain in place, unquote. You can read that, stating that these locations provide structured habitat for recreational and commercially important species. And they note that Nantucket Sound has limited natural hard structured habitat. However, the State Marine Fisheries does state, quote, and they say, if removing these structures is deemed necessary to maintain safe navigation, unquote, then they recommend removing only the uppermost portions of each structure and saying, quote, leaving the subtidal foundation riprap in place would allow for the preservation of some of the existing habitat, unquote. Taking it 7 feet below mean low water is certainly taking a lot of subtidal foundational riprap. I think that an important issue is posed by marine fisheries. Is removing these structures deemed necessary to maintain safe navigation? Who deems that? And how do you weigh an annual collision or a biannual, as in once every other year, collision without fatalities versus significant loss of habitat for recreational and commercial fisheries? Boaters are provided warning buoys. They might be improved. Do they need additional buoys? What is their responsibility for watching their depths and having navigational charts that show these features? Again, remember, marine fisheries, the state marine fisheries said we would prefer it was there, but if deemed necessary. A final point, if you'll bear with me, concerns the biological effects of the proposed dredging of Collier's Ledge. I want to place another 2 articles in the record. The species profile for tautog, National Marine Fisheries Service species profile, it's pretty long, a long life history habitat study, and the National Marine Fisheries Service report on black sea bass life history and habitat characteristics. I'm putting that in the file. These 2 lengthy scientific articles make clear the importance of coarse material with lots of crevices and eelgrass as habitat for juvenile tautog, and the importance of coarse, hard-bottomed reef habitat for black sea bass. Now, this gets real interesting, and I want you to think about this before you say, oh, you know, we're not going to have conditions. We can stop this. I believe the marine fisheries can help if this thing gets appealed. I mean, it should be brought, you know. The Tautog report, authored by Stymie and Shaheen, notes that when reef heights are reduced, there is siltation. They quote, Reef habitats that lose structural height. This is about the tautog. Reef habitats that lose structural height are more prone to siltation or burial by sediment movement. They say Briggs and Connor report that tautog avoided estuarine areas that were sand-filled as from shoreline and replenishment. The decline in the number, distribution, and structure of oyster beds is another threat to the estuarine habitat needs of juvenile tautog and other species with similar habitat needs. The creation of new reef habitat by the artificial reef programs of most states where the species occur may be mitigating this habitat degradation to some degree. Stymie and Shaheen, that's the tautog, they reference an article by Rothschild et al. 1994. Although Rothschild deals with the impacts of oyster beds, they speak directly to the value of maintaining wave-washed reefs. Quote, this is talking about oyster beds, but it's about siltation that happens if you lower them. In addition to the substantial decline in substrate area upon which young oysters can grow, the quality of existing bars must have also been affected. The reduced profile of oyster bars modifies the water flow near the oyster and presumably increases the deposition of silt on the bar. Relatively intense flow evidently mitigates the negative effects of siltation and biodeposition. It is reasonable to think that flattening of bar profile affects the dynamics of sedimentation on and around the bar, unquote. It seems reasonable to think, this is me speaking now, that the wave-washed profile of Collier's Ledge and the Southwest Rock Day Beacon provide important sediment-free cavities for juvenile fish and marine invertebrates. And again, if a few minutes of Googling various word searches of Collier's Ledge, black sea bass, squid, fishing, Cape Cod, blah, blah, you will find so many articles about the value and importance of Collier's Ledge. I mean, a couple of points. When the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act reauthorization passed Congress in 1996, it states, this is the law of the federal law, one of the greatest long-term threats to the viability of commercial and recreational fisheries is the continuing loss of marine estuarine and other aquatic habitats. And in a strategic plan by NIMS, the long-term viability of living marine resources depends on protection of the habitat. I mean, if you look at our Wetlands Protection Act in section 310 CMR 10.25, it talks about the protection of marine fisheries. It talks about recreational marine fisheries. And this project fits it to the T. And it says, quote, these presumptions may be overcome only upon a clear showing that the area or land does not play a role in the protection of marine fisheries. You can't do that. And then it says, and if the issuing authority makes a written determination to such effect. The commission, are we going to say, oh, it's not going to affect it? This is a significant resource. And if it's appealed, it's going to go to the state. And then the state's going to go, hey, marine fisheries. And I hope to heck they'll end up looking at the first recommendation of the marine fisheries, the state, and it says it should remain in place, but if it's deemed necessary. And what's necessary? I mean, somebody driving a boat not being careful? Where are the, lots of fatalities that are happening? They're not. They're people that are not being careful. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bill. Let me go to Peak before I go to public comment. Peak.
Yeah, thank you. There's having a background in science and ichthyology graduate level course, I completely agree with everything that Bill said. Christine, I've got a question for you, please. Acknowledging that Bill's quite right that a lowering of a waved, washed, turbulent area to keep it free of sedimentation diminishes with increasing depth of overlying water. So right now the Collier's Ledge is getting wave turbulence, keeping it free of sedimentation. If we go down to 7 feet, Bill's point that increased sedimentation is probably true. So my question, Christine, is why 7 feet? Why not 4 feet? Why was 7 feet chosen for this? 7 feet below mean low water.
That depth was chosen by the Coast Guard based on the size of the boats that frequent this area, and that was the depth they deemed to be, adequate for the largest subset of boats.
Because and then Abo, you're a captain out there. Are there boats with their engines down that draw more than 7 feet?
If I may.
Shall I
In addition to what Christine said,
not?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Tom.
Do you want me to respond to Peter or not, Tom? Your call.
Well, I'd ask John Abadili a question because he's a big boater in this region.
Okay, John.
I think there are people with more knowledge than I have, Pete, but there are some larger vessels, and I mean larger vessels that would need that kind of depth under mean low. Now, I guess you can argue, well, 6 feet enough. I'm not smart enough. But I kind of rely on people that know larger vessels more than I would, Pete. So,
because sort of my thought is that.
Hey, could I jump in on that, David Lawler?
No, just 1 minute.
Okay. So I think I could answer the question. That's all.
So my thoughts is again, if we have to take some of this off, and again, Bill, if you really think that the Division of Marine Fisheries will back us on a protection of critical fish habitat, I could be swayed as to, destruction of habitat is ecologically a folly. But I do worry, and again, I'm not getting if we get a condition of other reefs being built, that's a benefit. But back to you, Christine. You said 7 feet, but is 4 feet. What about 4 feet? And thank you for listening.
Sure. Thank you for your comments. Dan, did you have something to provide about that?
As Christine noted, 7 feet is what the Coast Guard is requesting concessionally. Keep in mind, the Coast Guard wanted to take it down to the mud line, right? Restored to natural organic bathymetry. So 7 feet is meeting in the middle.
Okay.
Is what they consider to be a safe navigable depth for general use.
Okay.
I also noticed that one of the individuals in the audience is Wayne Kirky. He would have a lot more experience with larger vessels than I would. But a valid question, Peter.
So let me go this way. Okay.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. I wanted to say that as we move forward with this, I know there's a lot of concern on the part of the commission that, if we end up voting no, then we don't get to put any conditions down. But if it is appealed and we have a finding, and that finding goes into the DEP, and it makes clear that, in fact, we read the letter by the Marine Fisheries, and they said to keep it in place. In fact, one of their conditions is that rock be used to supplement additional habitat elsewhere. In other words, take the rock and put it. That's what Marine Fisheries, that's one of their conditions. You're ultimately going to end up with the Marine Fisheries conditions, even in an appeal. But I think if we end up saying why this is a really bad idea, and we have it in a finding, and it goes to the DEP, someone's going to read that, and they're going to go, whoa, what about that? And they're going to go to Marine Fisheries. They're going to go, hey, what about that? And so I don't know that this has to happen. That
The other
it's going
side of
to
that, though, Bill.
fait accompli. I don't believe it.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me have a control here a little bit. I think the question is, is 7 feet deep enough, or can it be shallower? So let me go to Wayne first. What is your experience? How deep is kind of the draft with the engine down?
Well, most of the small boats, 7 feet is more than adequate, but there are larger boats out there for sure. And I know because I've hauled many of them that have hit that reef through the years. In fact, before Towboat US emerged and Sea Tow and those guys, we did a lot of the towing from Collier's Ledge. Now, and I'll also tell you that 1 strike a year is maybe how many get reported to the harbor master or get reported to the Coast Guard, but it isn't 1 strike a year. It's multiple strikes, the last of which was a week ago Friday. And we hauled the boat out. We finished hauling it that night in the dock at about 7 o'clock. And we did notice, by the way, that upon the strike, it broke off the gear cases and dumped that oil someplace. I assume it dumped it right on the reef. But if not there, it dumped it, as it was being towed in. I'll also tell you that I've been writing the Coast Guard for years saying, there's another strike. There's another strike. I gave up for a few years, and I would do it again. In the letter I wrote a few weeks ago, not knowing that the Coast Guard was going to think about leaving some of the reef there, I suggested the same thing. Coincidentally, I had written in 8 feet, and what I did was I blew up a chart showing what areas are near the reef. And there are some areas near that reef within even just about a mile that some show rocky bottoms and some are sand. And my thought was, if they're going to take all that rock out of there, that within a mile or so, we could plant some pretty good reefs that are thick, meaning high off the ground, because even like a quarter mile away, there's some deep water, and a mile away, you've got some 22, 25 foot areas, 14-foot areas, etc. So we could dump a lot of that rock there, save the taxpayers a fortune not sending that stuff all the way to a reef off of Dennis or Howard or whatever it is, and we could have a nice deep reef once again, in addition to whatever's left on the bottom here. So that was my thought on the subject. I'll also tell you that I remember one couple that invited another couple out, and when they sunk. Fortunately, when they sunk, the boat hit bottom, and they were able to stand up and stay alive until either the Coast Guard reached them or a private tow company. So this idea of 1 boat a year is just because that's what you're not obligated to report when you hit bottom, unless you're in a coral reef that's protected or something like that. But back to where it could go, I would volunteer to contact the ocean fisheries people and the Coast Guard, and with this blown up chart explaining that they'd save the taxpayers a fortune, and we could have 1 or more reefs out there just because we have so much material to work with that would come out of here.
Thank you, Wayne. Dave, you want to say something about the depths?
Oh, I do. I first want to say that they're both sides here are seeking something good. Okay. And that doesn't always happen in these boards. I appear before you guys, and I'm here just as my average citizen. And the person who spoke before me is, a client, but also a dear friend, and I'm in opposite position. But and he does. I'm not going to suggest he knows the area better than anybody. But I've also been boating in the area for
I'll be 60 years old this year, and my entire life as a little kid with my father, and now with my grandchildren. And but to answer the question, I mean, there's a couple of things and a suggestion I want to make. I'm not going to get into the fishery stuff. I talked about that at the last meeting, and there are people here who fish for a living are much more qualified to talk about that than I am. But first, just the general issue about the depth of 7 feet. Most boats now with outboard motors, you're talking, especially if you're going fast, 1.5, 2, 3 feet. Now you do have large keel sailboats and some of the larger vessels, but virtually all of those are heading straight out. And for one of those big vessels in this shallow area to be running up and down the coast that close to land is foolish. Now, do people make foolish decisions? Yes, they do. But most larger boats, because this is very close to shore, run out the channel. And if they're heading to, say, for instance, the only other port that would get in the way would be Osterville or Cotuit, they head way out. And if they're smart, they come back in the channel on the much bigger boats, large keel sailboats and whatnot. But what I was going to get into is some things that I've observed with the folks here who are presenting this. And I know that, again, they're hired to do their job, and they seem to be very qualified and well-intended. Obviously, safety is important, but marine habitat is also important. And in the law, quite often in court, and you folks are almost like the judges, there's what's referred to as balancing of the harms. And you look at the one harm in this, okay, we have boat strikes. And the other, which I will present to be a larger harm, is the loss of the habitat that Bill so eloquently spoke about and that some folks are going to speak about later. And then there's a third component, though, and this is the part I really want to focus on, is the mitigation of the harm. Can we make the harm less for both? And Ms. Perron and Mr. Del Tufo are here, hired by the Coast Guard. And what my recommendation would be is that there were several questions asked to them about what does the Coast Guard want? And a lot of this material this marine fisheries report wasn't available, sir, I don't believe, initially. And the question to Mr. Del Toro was, has anybody thought about, increasing the navigational hazard buoys or to install one potentially on Colliers, I know, or the other rock, or fix it, and to beef that up? And the answer was, I don't know. When it came on my desk, that decision had already been made. Well, I'm not sure the Coast Guard had all the information. And obviously the Coast Guard is a wonderful, wonderful, thank God we have them. But maybe we ask to send this back to the Coast Guard and get a letter from the Coast Guard and ask them a series of questions, and on Coast Guard letterhead, and have them answer the questions and say, have you just, considered, for cost-effective reasons, for, whatnot, maybe to install some really, significant navigational buoys, or, rather than spend hundreds of thousands of millions, whatever it's going to cost to remove that material.
Yeah.
Install a permanent structure on top of Colliers, which would be a beacon on Colliers, and allow that, and send it back to the Coast Guard and say, hey, we have a lot of concerns here. There doesn't seem to be a hurry. It doesn't seem that with the condition of construction window that there's no way they're going to be able to get this done this spring. And they're certainly not, I hope, going to do it in the summertime. So what I would ask is this board request that Mr. Del Toro and Ms. Perron continue this matter, send it back to the Coast Guard with a series of questions, and rather than balance the harms, let's mitigate the harms for both. And that's what my suggestion would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Let me go to Jacob. Jacob?
Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'll just you already know my opinion about this whole thing. My biggest one would be just a couple specifics that I'd like to point on would be that the markers are about 100 yards off of the actual rock pile themselves. So an unexperienced boater coming upon that hazard buoy, the big black and red thing, would say, go left or right. If they decide to go north of that thing, in which they thought would be an ample amount of space, they're actually going to go right into the rock pile. And I kind of always thought it was kind of funny, and I never really knew why it was so far off of the rock pile. But part of me just thinks that the reason it's actually hit so much is because it's kind of marked funny, and I'm not sure why it's marked exactly the way it is. And then another thing that I wanted to mention was that, if you were really going to take the top off of it, I mean, mean low water, like if you took off like 3 feet off of mean low, I mean, nobody in a real boat is going to be even going anywhere near that thing to begin with. And that would 3 feet off of mean low water would reduce basically everyone that hits it, because everyone that hits it is somebody that's going fast in a small convertible or sport fisher or a center console, or because I've seen the pictures and of who hits these things, and it's nobody in a big keel. It's no sailboats that are hitting this. They're all cautious. They're all on the channel. It's no big commercial fishing boats or transit. There's no ferries hitting this. So.
Are you all set, Jay?
Yep,
Can
thank
I,
you.
would it be possible for me to speak again when you have time?
Yeah, just a 1 minute. Let me go to Joseph.
And Wayne, could you mute yourself, please?
Yeah. How you doing? My name's Joseph Huckemeyer. I operate party and charter boats out of Hyannis. I fish Collier's Ledge over the last 30 years, every season in the spring. I have concerns about taking this rock pile out. It's not an easy fix one way or another. First of all, it's a scup spawning area. It's a squid spawning area. There's blackfishing takes place there, tautog, lobsters on the rocks there. The rock pile's been there at least since 1857. I have a chart, an original chart from 1857, and it's on there on that chart. It's been there a long time. I'm sure boats have hit it back then even, but they're not the only rocks that get hit. The Bishop and Clerks get hit all the time. Someone hit Gannett Rock. Even in the bay, Spindle Rock gets hit. People run into rocks all the time, just like cars run off the highway and take light poles down. And if they're not paying attention, they're gonna damage their boats. I think by taking the ledge out to a shallower depth doesn't make it any safer. In some cases, may make it more dangerous, because what's going to happen now is you're still going to need a buoy on it. There's rocks all over there, Bursa's Rock, Gallatin Rock. They all have 4 or 5 feet over them, and there's buoys still on them. So you're still going to need to put a buoy on it, because in a day when you have any kind of choppy weather, 7 feet all of a sudden becomes 3 feet in a sea. And I would never go near that thing, that rock. I wouldn't go. I'd be more worried about people running into it with it out, not sticking out of the water, than when it's submerged with only a small amount of distance over the top of it. As far as moving if it did end up getting moved or removed, taking it to an artificial reef means it's going to go nowhere near where it is now. There's no artificial reefs near where Collier's Ledge is. I know it would take a lot to do, but if you were going to move it, you just move it real close. It'll save a ton of money, and you move it to the south into a little bit deeper water, but salvage the habitat. I mean, you're going to do some damage to it, but at least there's still a place there. There's another reason that a lot of the boats count on Collier's Ledge. in the spring, a lot of times we have a strong southwest wind. And when we have an outgoing tide, wind against tide, you lay broadside to the sea. So what a lot of the boats do early in the scub season is they go west of Collier's Ledge, because the ledge blocks the current, and then the boats can lay up into the sea more comfortable, or even be able to get the trips in where they wouldn't be able to otherwise. I don't think there's many people know that there's even a thought of taking Collier's Ledge out, because if there was, you'd have about 100 people from the public on this meeting having opposition towards it. Everybody I spoke to today had no idea that this was going to happen. There was no public hearing. The only thing I knew about it earlier from 9 or 10 months ago, I got a call from DMF, and they asked me my thoughts on it. And I told them that there was going to be a lot of opposition, and I told them the same reasons that I just mentioned here now. And it's not an easy fix, and I understand people run into the ledge quite often. Relatively speaking, there's other rocks in Nantucket Sound that get hit even more, but those rocks aren't getting taken out. So, but I have a vessel that has a 7-foot draft that we fish right alongside Collier's Ledge. So I wouldn't go, if you took that down to 7 feet to 5 feet, still can't go over it. And in some cases, you're going to have boats that are going to hit bottom because they're not going to know that it's there. With Collier's Ledge, at least you see it on the radar if you have a radar, or you see it if you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, there's plenty of places to run aground in Nantucket Sound. And I'd hate to lose the habitat. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Wayne?
Thank you. I agree with something out of almost what every speaker said, but I'll say a couple of additional things. First of all, I've hauled some deep draft sailboats that have hit for sure, and I remember hauling a Hatteras that I was afraid might be too much for my travel lift, but I didn't want the thing to sink. And so that's why I think if we put an artificial reef in, of course, deep water, now we can have the best of both worlds. We can have a big reef, and it can still be 15 feet deep or something like that. I can tell you that I've asked the Coast Guard for many years, can they move the buoys closer, or can they bring in additional buoys? And their answer consistently was, we're not sending our buoy tenders any closer to that rock pile. Well, they moved it once after they did move it once, but after that they said, we moved it. We're not sending our buoy tender in any closer. And then I asked for an additional buoy, or suggested it, I should say. And they have an additional small buoy this last year or so, but there's still plenty of angles people hit it from. And it's such a large area that they get hit. And I'll tell you also about Southwest Rock. It had a beacon on it for years, and then it came down in Hurricane Bob. And in the couple of years that it was down, it got hit over and over, including our police boat, who had to run into Squaw Island and beach themselves so that it didn't sink. And that's because Southwest Rock is in the path from Hyannis to two of the ports on the Vineyard. So and relative to the 7 feet, I have a theory as to why. I didn't hear this from the Coast Guard, but when one studies the charts close enough, you'll see that they have buoys on the rocks in these well-traveled areas that are 6 feet down, or that are up to 6 feet down, but at 7 feet, you don't see the buoys any longer. So I believe that's their mandate, I think that's the size they've decided is don't need to be marked. And one last thing, their goal is to have less and less buoys through the years, and they took out a lot of them in the last couple of years, and we had to plead with them to leave some of the buoys in, and the harbor master's office was nice enough to ask them to leave the buoy in over by Long Beach. There, it's called the Spindle or something like that, which has always amazed me since there's never been a spindle on it. But That, but we got that. There are two rocks there that have gotten hit multiple times. We need the buoys, but they can't see. They can't. They don't feel. They don't feel they're ever gonna move them any closer. And that I can tell you from conversations I had with more than one captain and several people that were assigned to it through the years.
Thank you,
So
Wayne.
thank you for the time.
Thank you, Wayne. Jacob, I saw your hands up again.
Yeah, just a couple of things to reiterate that, like what Joe said. One, first of all, if people really knew about this, I mean, I think like what I think David said too. I mean, this does maybe have to go to a vote tonight, and maybe you could go to the Coast Guard with a reconsideration, because I don't think a lot of people really know about this, and I think they'd really disappoint a huge amount of our community to hear that this went through like this on just such short term without any notice. And in reality, like, why not just put a day beacon in there? I mean, with what everything that Ed said, or Bill, excuse me, he's you know, there we have such a strong case for this against appeal, and and then one more thing too, like, you know, Joe's got a boat that draws 7 feet, and if they or whatever, it goes down to, I have my bigger boat draws 3.5 feet. If that was down to 7 feet, I would still never go anywhere near that thing, because that's just not what you would ever do. You know, I mean, it doesn't really matter how much you take it down. It's still it's an extreme hazard that you wouldn't even test no matter what. And you're just really just taking away habitat for really nothing. You know, yeah, some center consoles can go over it, but it's really not. It's not. They can go around. They go fast. They can go around it. They can figure out how to go around it. You know, I mean, I think you should just take this to the Coast Guard with some reconsiderations about maybe just increasing the markers around it, and seeing how that goes. It's only one guy a year things their boat up, and nothing and they, you know, if they knew better, they could probably get themselves home, you know.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jacob. Craig.
Gotta unmute himself, Tom.
Craig, unmute yourself.
Okay, hi, thank you. I've been sailing and motor boating here for over 60 years. And, you know, fortunately, I know about colliers. I know about many other rocks that are undisclosed in the area. What I find really interesting as I watch the other levels of the Conservation Commission's involvement, protecting area within the 100-foot and managing area between the 100 and the 50-foot line, and it's in our backyard, it's here, it's plainly visible. This is a half a mile out in the water, and the fact that we could consider just wiping out habitat that is just one key to a very large ecosystem is I'm amazed. I'm amazed. You know, when you drive a car, you agree to educate yourself and learn the rules of the road. You should have the same requirement when you operate a boat, and to just start removing structure that has been there for in excess of 100 years. Where do you stop? You know, when they hit the next rock that is to the there's another one to the east of southeast of southwest. You know, and when is that? That one's 1.5 feet underwater and it's unmarked. All right, you know, there's an obligation that and a level of responsibility that should be exercised. I think we stand to lose so much. The thought of siltation because this is lowered. You know, Nantucket Sound is a very poor bottom, and we're going to make it worse. I don't know. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Craig. Channel 18, any more public comment on this one?
I don't believe so, but if anyone else is here for public comment, now is your time to speak.
Could we get Craig's last name and address, please, for the record?
My name is Craig Ashworth, 205 Old Jail Lane in Barnstable.
Thank you.
You got it, Kim?
Yep.
Tom,
thank
I know
you.
I made a comment, and the request I would ask that it be made through the chair to the two individuals, whether they can take it back to the Coast Guard. I forgot to mention that in my presentation. If I didn't want to ask them directly, but if through the chair, I could ask them to go back and see the reconsideration we talked about, presenting the letter from the Commonwealth and the idea of maybe designing a better buoy system that would surround the rock pile and again mitigate the harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I think we need to move on.
Yeah. So let's finish I think we're done with the public comment on this one right now. So I just want to go back to the commissioner in terms of the discussions. Based on, Dave's comment and Jacob's comment stuff. And I think that we are not really in the rush trying to can we get some comment back from the Coast Guard? Is that a fair question, John?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, a couple of things. Listen, guys, I think it's absolutely clear that this is a navigation hazard. The record supports that. It is absolutely clear that this is a great sea
habitat.
Thank you, Bill. That needs to be preserved. I think there are really two, and both of those are supported by the evidence in the record and by good sound testimony. So we're kind of weighing these things. I think I am also concerned, but one place I disagree is the Division of Marine Fisheries really supporting anything. This is a voluntary filing. It comes under a different kind of set of criteria than I've ever seen in my years on the commission, and I think that's a concern. I go back and say, if we try to balance these two conflicting things, I don't think that there is enough evidence on the record. I am not satisfied with the representatives simply saying, well, we never asked the Coast Guard about additional markers. I think that is a critical piece of information, Tom, that I would ask them to go back, get an answer to that question. I think the question that Peter raised about the depth, have they specifically looked at the situation at these two locations to determine whether the 7 feet is, well, we always ask for 7 feet, or is there something specific given the history here? So I think there are several significant open questions that I would suggest they go on a continuance. If we have to vote for this thing tonight, I am really torn. I have to say, speaking for myself, because I believe there really is a navigation hazard. I really believe that there is an environment there that we have to protect. I kind of lean that says, well, maybe if we put in a condition that, within X miles, you got to rebuild another habitat, maybe that's a good thing to do. Bill, I really don't believe that the Division of Marine Fisheries would ever support this the way you would hope they would. Especially given the fact that it's the U.S. Coast Guard and then it's a voluntary filing. They could always do something different. So that's what my thinking is. I would like to see this go on a continuance. I would like to see more information submitted.
So I am in agreement with John. I think there is still those questions unanswered that we need some answers from the Coast Guard. And before we can make up our decisions, because I don't think it's a time sensitive at this point. I think we have time to deal with this and to get some clarifications from Coast Guard. Christine, what do you think?
I agree, and I support a continuance to try to get more information from the Coast Guard to answer these questions and address your concerns.
Thank you for your understanding. How much time do you think you need?
Let's say 2 weeks for now, and I can circle back if that won't be enough time.
So 2 weeks from now would be November the 26th, right?
Yep.
Okay.
3 weeks.
I got my hand
understanding
up.
that the week of the 26th is Thanksgiving.
No, just a minute. Bill?
Yeah, a day beacon, as I understand it, is literally something which is placed right in the ground. It's not a floating buoy. A buoy is an anchored thing.
Right.
But a beacon in which you have some kind of a, I don't know what I'm not a day beacon engineer, but I would like to have you ask the Corps why a day beacon is not something that can't be installed. It's going to cost them a ton of money to dredge whatever it is, 3,900 cubic yards of rock. How much does it cost to put in a day beacon? I mean, that would be like sitting right on that pile of rocks. And I would want to know that. Why can't you do that?
And
Thanks.
I have a question too.
Yeah, Pete.
So thankfully, Christine has acknowledged the continuance for us to get more information so we can make a decision on this, an informed decision. I would hope for something directly from the Division of Marine Fisheries as to the points that Bill brought out in their habitat support of Collier's Ledge, and that the loss of habitat, this diversity of habitat represented by these rock ledges, is a major concern for marine fisheries. I would like a letter from Marine Fisheries specifically addressing our questions that we've been raising here as well. Thank you.
Pete, I just wonder though, whether they'd be willing to modify the letter they've already submitted. I don't know. Not familiar enough with them.
I don't think that you'd need another letter, Pete, if I might. I mean, they basically said it should remain in place.
Okay.
But if it is deemed necessary because of safety issues.
Okay.
And so then the question becomes, well, who deems it and is it a safety issue? And, that's debatable. I mean, someone drives into a.
Well, I think, Bill, in all due respect, I think there is strong evidence that it is a navigation issue, a safety issue, but a balance against that, the removal of wonderful, habitats. That's my dilemma, just speaking for myself.
But do you end up removing? I mean, we just heard testimony from other people driving boats around, and people hit all kinds of rocks. And we have a letter, do we get rid of all of the obstacles in the Elizabethan island chain, et cetera?
That's not the question before us.
Yeah.
We're talking about these 2 points. So, and we have whatever.
I mean,
okay. Well, Christine, when you ask a Coast Guard those questions, you should asking them in terms of, is that a float or is that a spindle or some other device that would help the navigations warnings?
There are multiple markings that the Coast Guard has used.
Yeah.
With spindles, day markings,
day beacon
lights. There's multiple ones. So, I think that's a valid question.
Yeah.
Yes, we can ask that.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to continue this to November the 26th?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney, aye. Sampu.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine and Dan.
Thank you for your time.
Jacob.
Have a nice night.
Yep. Nice. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Dave and Wayne.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Joe. We have one easy certificate of compliance. Williams Swift, SE 3-5852. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Tangney, aye. Sampu.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Unanimous.
We have one set of minute, October the 29th.
Abadili?
Angela, you gotta make the motion.
Sorry, I make a motion to accept the minutes for October 29th.
I second the motion.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
And Tangney, aye. That's unanimous.
Our next meeting is November. Our next meeting is November the 26th at 6:30. So, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Tangney, aye. Sampu.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
And Abadili.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Adjourned at 8:40.